Lieutenant Colonel Jake Martinez stared at the anomalous readings on his monitor, a cold sweat breaking across his forehead. His fingers flew across the keyboard, running diagnostic after diagnostic. This couldn't be right. But with each passing second, the data only became clearer, more definitive. The massive objects were real, and they were coming straight for Earth. "Dr. Kane," he called, his voice steadier than he felt. "I need verification on these readings." Elizabeth Kane glanced up from her workstation across the NORAD command center, buried deep within Cheyenne Mountain. She had been analyzing atmospheric patterns, searching for any sign of the mysterious radiation bursts detected last month. The urgency in Jake's voice made her pause. "What am I looking at?" she asked, crossing the room to his station. "These," Jake pointed to the cluster of red dots appearing at the edge of their deep space monitoring grid. "Each signature is massive, and there are thousands of them." Dr. Kane's eyes widened as she processed the data. "This can't be natural. The formation is too deliberate." She tapped a few commands, enhancing the resolution. "They're maintaining perfect spacing, and the trajectory directly to Earth," Jake finished. "Speed suggests they'll reach our orbit in less than 8 hours." The command center, normally humming with routine activities, grew silent as personnel began noticing the escalating situation at Jake's station. Colonel Wilson, the base commander, approached with measured steps. "Martinez, report." "Sir, at Oro 9:47 Mountain Time, our deep space arrays detected multiple objects entering the solar system. Current count is at 47,938 objects, each approximately the size of a naval destroyer. They're maintaining formation and accelerating toward Earth." Colonel Wilson's face remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed his shock. "Get me the Pentagon, now." Within 30 minutes, the President of the United States, Lisa Murphy, was standing in the Situation Room, surrounded by her national security team. The Joint Chiefs looked grim as satellite imagery from the newly deployed James Webb III telescope provided visual confirmation of what appeared to be a massive fleet of spacecraft. "Madam President," Defense Secretary Tom Bradley began, "we're looking at what can only be described as an alien armada approaching Earth. At current speeds, they'll be in position to strike by 1800 hours." President Murphy, only 18 months into her first term, studied the images with remarkable composure. "And we're certain these aren't natural phenomena? Some kind of asteroid cluster?" "No, ma'am." General Kevin Brooks, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, replied. "The objects are clearly artificial, maintaining perfect formation and adjusting course. They're powered vessels under intelligent control." The room fell silent as the implications settled over them. Humanity was about to make first contact with an alien civilization. And judging by the size and formation of the approaching fleet, it wasn't going to be a friendly exchange of cultural artifacts. "What are our options?" the president asked. Before anyone could answer, a communications officer burst into the room. "Madam President, we're receiving a transmission. It's being broadcast on all frequencies, all channels, worldwide." The main screen flickered, and an image appeared. The being on the screen was humanoid, but clearly alien, gray-skinned with elongated features, and eyes that glowed with an unnatural amber light. "People of Earth." The alien spoke in perfect English, its voice resonating with an unsettling harmonic quality. "I am Admiral Zexar of the Voran Empire. Your planet has been claimed as territory of the Emperor. You will surrender immediately and submit to Imperial rule. Resistance is futile. Your primitive weapons are no match for our technology. You have 6 of your Earth hours to deliver your unconditional surrender. After that time, we will commence planetary pacification procedures." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Situation Room in stunned silence. "Get me the G7 leaders, the UN Secretary General, and the heads of state for Russia, China, and India." President Murphy ordered. "We need a unified response." Within the hour, an emergency global teleconference was underway. Panic had already begun spreading across the world as the alien message repeated itself in every language, on every broadcast channel, on every device capable of receiving signals. The United States will not surrender to this threat, President Murphy declared to her counterparts. But we need a united front. Whatever happens in the next few hours will determine the fate of our entire species. The Russian president nodded gravely. For once, we are in complete agreement. Russia will not bow to these invaders. Similar sentiments echoed from each leader, a rare moment of global unity forged in the crucible of existential threat. As the world's political leaders conferred, military commands worldwide scrambled to activate defense protocols. Fighter jets were scrambled, missile systems brought online, and nuclear arsenals placed on high alert, though most commanders privately doubted conventional weapons would have any effect against a civilization capable of interstellar travel. In the depths of NORAD, Jake Martinez and Elizabeth Kane continued analyzing the incoming fleet's data. Their propulsion system appears to be some kind of fusion drive, Dr. Kane noted. Advanced, but not incomprehensibly so. It's actually similar to theoretical models developed at MIT last year. Jake frowned. That's oddly reassuring and terrifying at the same time. You'd think interstellar travelers would have something more exotic. A secure phone line rang at their station, Jake answered, his expression shifting from concern to shock as he listened. Yes, sir. Understood. He hung up and turned to Elizabeth. That was Colonel Ryan Davis. We've been activated. Activated for what? Project Prometheus. The name meant nothing to Elizabeth, but Jake's expression told her it was significant. What is Project Prometheus? The reason we might survive today, Jake replied, gathering his things. We need to get to the Nevada facility immediately. Transport is waiting. Across the world's major cities, chaos erupted as the alien ultimatum spread. Stock markets crashed, religious gatherings swelled, and streets filled with people either fleeing to the countryside or simply standing in shock, staring at the sky. Emergency services were overwhelmed, and government struggled to maintain order while activating long-dormant civil defense protocols. In Washington, D.C., Secretary Bradley entered the Oval Office with a secure tablet. Madam President, it's time to activate Prometheus. President Murphy's expression hardened. I was hoping we'd never need it. The project leads assure me we're ready. The fleet has been on standby since the first anomalous signals 3 years ago. She nodded slowly. Make the call. Deep beneath the Nevada desert, in a facility that didn't officially exist, Colonel Ryan Davis stood before a gathering of the most elite military and scientific personnel ever assembled. The cavernous underground chamber hummed with activity as technicians prepared systems that had been waiting for this moment for decades. Ladies and gentlemen, Davis addressed the room, his voice cutting through the noise. The Prometheus protocol has been activated by presidential order. This is not a drill. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. For those of you who have been compartmentalized, I'll be brief. Project Prometheus began in 1979, after we detected the first confirmed signals of intelligent extraterrestrial life. While the public was told these were natural phenomena, a classified coalition of global powers recognized the potential threat and began preparations. He gestured to a massive holographic display showing the solar system. Red dots indicated the approaching Voran fleet. For over 4 decades, we've been building, learning, preparing. The quantum barrier system went online 3 years ago. The fleet has been ready for 18 months. Jake and Elizabeth entered the chamber, just as Davis continued. 500 vessels, equipped with technologies that even most of the people in this room haven't been briefed on. We've had help. Let's leave it at that for now. Our fleet is positioned in the shadow of the moon, cloaked and waiting. Elizabeth leaned toward Jake. 500 ships? How is that possible? The resources required? The secrecy. International black budget, Jake whispered back. 2% of global GDP for 40 years, hidden in plain sight. Plus, some technological shortcuts we didn't develop ourselves. Davis continued. Our first test comes now. The Varan Advance Force has launched what appear to be plasma-based weapons to test Earth's defenses. Impact projected in 30 seconds. On the main screen, thousands of glowing projectiles could be seen streaming toward Earth from the alien fleet. Quantum barrier activation in 3, 2, 1. Everyone in the room held their breath. On the screen, the plasma weapons simply vanished. One moment they were streaking toward the atmosphere. The next, they were gone without a trace. Davis allowed himself a small smile. Barrier functioning at optimal levels. The plasma has been shifted into an alternate dimensional space. As far as the Varan are concerned, their weapons simply ceased to exist. A cheer went up from the assembled personnel. Don't celebrate yet, Davis cautioned. This was just a test. They'll try to find a way through. Captain Grant, prepare the fleet for reveal. A stern-faced woman in a midnight blue uniform stepped forward. Yes, Colonel. All ships at ready status. From a secure communications room off the main chamber, President Murphy addressed the coalition of world leaders who had been brought into the Prometheus secret. The barrier held. Now we show them our teeth. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Zexar observed with growing frustration as his plasma barrage disappeared without a trace. Impossible, he muttered. Scan again. There must be a defense system we're not detecting. His second-in-command, a battle-hardened Voran named Krell, consulted his instruments. No detectable energy fields. Admiral, by all readings, they have no planetary defense grid. Yet the weapons simply vanished. Zexar's amber eyes narrowed. No primitive species should have such capability. Prepare the main fleet for approach. I want orbital superiority within the hour. Launch infiltration pods to the surface. Target their military installations first. As the massive Voran ships began to advance, a communication officer interrupted. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the planet. Put it through. The view screen displayed Captain Michelle Grant, her expression calm and resolute. This is Captain Michelle Grant of the United Earth Fleet. You are in violation of sovereign space. You will power down your weapon systems and withdraw immediately. Zexar let out a bark of laughter. United Earth Fleet. Your pathetic planet has no unified defense force, and certainly no spacecraft capable of challenging the Voran Empire. Your deception is as transparent as it is desperate. Grant's expression didn't change. This is your only warning, Admiral. Withdraw or be destroyed. You dare threaten the might of the Voran Empire? Zexar snarled. Where is this supposed fleet? Our sensors detect nothing but primitive satellites and space debris. Captain Grant smiled thinly. Right here. At that moment, 500 warships rippled into visibility around the Varan fleet. They had been there all along, their advanced cloaking technology rendering them completely invisible until now. The Earth ships were sleek, angular vessels of a design unlike anything seen on Earth, their hulls gleaming with a material that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. For the first time, uncertainty flashed across Zexar's features. Impossible. Our scans would have... Your scans only detect what we allow them to detect. Admiral, Grant interrupted. This is your final opportunity. Withdraw your forces immediately. Zexar recovered quickly, his pride overcoming his momentary shock. We outnumber you 10-1. Your bravado is admirable but misplaced. The Voran Empire does not retreat. Numbers won't save you, Grant replied coldly. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal. Zexar cut the transmission, turning to his fleet commanders. Battle formation! Target their vessels and fire at will! The Voran fleet surged forward, weapon systems powering up across 50,000 ships. Energy beams lanced out toward the Earth vessels, which made no attempt to evade. Instead, the beams simply bent around them, as if space itself was warping to protect the human ships. "What is this?" Zexar demanded. "How are they—" "Admiral," Krell interrupted, his voice tight with alarm. "Our sensors are detecting—" "I don't understand. They're deploying weapons unlike anything in our records." The Earth fleet began to move, not in a defensive formation but aggressively, cutting through the Voran formations with impossible speed and precision. From each human vessel, different weapon systems activated simultaneously. Some fired what appeared to be concentrated points of absolute darkness that, upon contact with Voran ships, simply erased sections of the vessels from existence, not destroying them, but removing them from reality itself. Others deployed microscopic black holes with precisely controlled decay rates, creating localized gravitational shears that tore Voran vessels apart. From the flagship commanded by Captain Grant, a wave of quantum-entangled particles spread outward, bypassing shields and hull materials to rewrite the atomic structure of Voran technology, transforming functional components into inert matter. Another class of Earth vessel released clouds of what the Voran sensors identified as chronoton particles, aging targeted sections of enemy ships thousands of years in seconds, reducing advanced alloys to oxidized dust. The Voran fleet, despite its numerical superiority, found itself in a slaughter. Ships vanished by the hundreds, then thousands, as weapons they couldn't comprehend tore through their formations. "Return fire!" Zexar screamed. But the targeting systems couldn't lock onto the Earth vessels, which seemed to exist partially in other dimensions, phasing in and out of conventional space-time. In the Nevada Command Center, Colonel Davis watched the battle unfold with grim satisfaction. "Status report? Earth fleet engaging with 100% operational capacity," a technician reported. "Voran vessels being neutralized at projected rates. 0 casualties on our side. Quantum shields holding at maximum efficiency." Jake and Elizabeth watched in awe as the holographic display showed the once mighty alien armada being systematically dismantled. "Those aren't human technologies," Elizabeth whispered. "Not entirely." Jake nodded. "There were agreements made. Exchanges. Not all extraterrestrial contact has been hostile." On the main screen, Captain Grant's face appeared. "Colonel Davis, the enemy flagship is attempting to retreat along with a small escort. Should we pursue?" Davis looked to a secure communication line where President Murphy was watching. She gave a single nod. "Negative, Captain," Davis replied. "Allow the flagship and 17 escorts to withdraw. The rest are to be neutralized." "Understood, Colonel." Containing the remaining Voran vessels now. On the bridge of his flagship, Admiral Zexar watched in horror as his mighty invasion force was reduced to nothing in a matter of minutes. Of the 50,000 ships he had brought to subjugate Earth, only his command vessel and 17 escorts remained, and only because the humans had deliberately allowed them to survive. "Full retreat," he ordered, his voice hollow. "Maximum acceleration out of the system." "Admiral," Captain Grant's voice came through the communication system. "Before you depart, we have a message for you to deliver to your Emperor." Zexar wanted to cut the transmission, to flee with what little dignity remained. But he found himself compelled to listen. "Humanity has stood alone in this sector for millennia," Grant continued. "We developed in isolation, forced to solve our own problems without guidance or interference. It has made us innovative, creative in ways your empire, for all its might, has forgotten. We could have annihilated your entire fleet, including your flagship. Instead, we allow you to return with this message. The Earth is protected. We have no interest in conquest or aggression, but we will defend ourselves with absolute commitment." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Additionally, we are aware of the 57 worlds currently under Voran occupation. Their freedom is now a matter of interest to Earth. We suggest you reconsider your imperial policies before we are forced to take a more active role in galactic affairs." With that, the transmission ended, leaving Zexar staring at the view screen in stunned silence. Behind his vessel, the remaining Voran ships were being systematically erased from existence. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasting a mere 4 minutes and 37 seconds from start to finish. "Set course for Vorth Prime," he ordered quietly. "Maximum speed." As the surviving Voran ships fled the solar system, celebrations erupted across Earth. The alien transmission had been public, and so had Captain Grant's response. Humanity had stood its ground against an interstellar empire and emerged not merely victorious, but utterly dominant. In cities worldwide, people poured into streets, strangers embracing as the existential terror of the morning gave way to euphoric relief. Religious leaders called for prayers of thanksgiving, while political figures scrambled to address their nations, each claiming some credit for the salvation that few had known was even possible. In the White House, President Murphy addressed a hastily assembled press conference. Today, humanity faced its greatest challenge and prevailed. The threat has been neutralized, and Earth is safe. I want to assure every citizen of every nation that the defensive capabilities demonstrated today represent a unified Earth initiative, not the property of any single country. She paused, weighing her next words carefully. For decades, the nations of Earth have secretly cooperated on Project Prometheus, preparing for this very contingency. The time has come for transparency. In the coming days, I will be meeting with world leaders to discuss the full disclosure of our defensive capabilities and our new role in the wider galactic community. Across the void of space, Admiral Zexar knelt before Emperor Thaxmor in the grand throne room of the Imperial Palace on Vorth Prime. The Emperor, a towering figure of the same species, but adorned with bioluminescent markings denoting his royal lineage, looked down with undisguised contempt. "You lost 50,000 warships to a pre-spacefaring civilization?" Thaxmor's voice was deceptively soft, making it all the more menacing. "My Emperor," Zexar began, keeping his eyes downcast. "The humans. They are not what our intelligence suggested. They have technologies far beyond our comprehension. Weapons that defy the laws of physics as we understand them." "Impossible," the Emperor scoffed. "Our empire spans 7 sectors. Our science has been developing for millennia. No isolated world could possibly—" "I have brought evidence." "My Emperor," Zexar interrupted, a dangerous breach of protocol that showed his desperation. He gestured, and an aide activated a holographic projector, displaying the battle from the flagship's records. The throne room fell silent as the Imperial Court watched Earth vessels materialize from nowhere, deploying weapons that seemed to violate reality itself. Ships vanishing, aging to dust, being rewritten at the molecular level. The footage was as clear as it was devastating. When the recording ended, Emperor Thaxmor sat in stunned silence, his contempt replaced by the first flickers of fear. "How?" he finally asked. "How could they have developed such technology without our knowledge?" "They claim to have developed independently, Majesty," Zexar replied. "In isolation. They also—" He hesitated. "They also expressed knowledge of our occupied worlds and suggested they might take an interest in their liberation." The implications rippled through the court like a shockwave. An isolated planet with technology that could obliterate the Empire's most powerful fleet in minutes, now threatening to intervene in Imperial affairs? On the occupied world of Za 4, news of the Voran defeat spread like wildfire through underground resistance networks. Calvest, leader of the largest resistance cell, gathered his commanders in a hidden bunker beneath the ruins of what had once been the planet's capital. "If this information is accurate," he began, his reptilian features set in determination, "the Voran Empire has finally met its match. The humans destroyed 50,000 ships in less than 5 minutes. Can we trust these reports, asked his second, a scarred veteran of 20 years of resistance. It could be disinformation. Multiple sources confirm, Calvest replied. And look at the Imperial response. They've recalled 3 occupation fleets from the outer systems. They're frightened. He activated a star map, showing the local galactic sector. If Earth decides to make good on its threat to intervene in occupied worlds, we need to be ready to coordinate with them. Spread the word to all resistance cells. Prepare for potential liberation. The tide is turning. Similar conversations were occurring across dozens of worlds, as subjugated species dared to hope for the first time in generations. The myth of Voran invincibility had been shattered in a single, decisive engagement. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic hub known as Nexus Station, representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations gathered in emergency session. The station, positioned at the junction of several major hyperspace routes, served as neutral ground for interstellar diplomacy among the non-Voran-aligned powers. The footage appears authentic, stated Delegate Lorex of the Tellurian Confederation. The closest thing the Voran Empire had to an equal. Earth vessels deployed technology that exceeds even our theoretical models. The question, responded Ambassador Kavol of the Myriad Worlds Compact, is whether they represent a new threat or a potential ally against Voran expansion. They claim to have no imperial ambitions, noted another delegate. But then, so did the Voran 1,000 years ago. I propose we establish diplomatic contact immediately, Lorex suggested. Better to approach them as potential friends than wait until they decide their interests extend beyond their solar system. Back on Earth, in the halls of the United Nations, Dr. Andrew Ross, Chief Scientific Advisor to Project Prometheus, addressed the General Assembly. For the first time, the full scope of humanity's secret preparations was being revealed to the world's population. Project Prometheus began in 1979, when radio astronomers detected patterns that could only be artificial in origin. While the public was told these were natural phenomena, a classified analysis confirmed we were detecting communications between spacecraft of the Voran Empire. Murmurs spread through the assembly as historical events were suddenly recontextualized. The Cold War provided ideal cover for the initial phases of the project. The Soviet Union and United States, while maintaining public hostility, secretly collaborated on the early research. As the project expanded, other nations were brought in, first the nuclear powers, then countries with specific resources or expertise needed for development. He advanced to the next slide, showing the progression of the project through decades. By the late 1990s, we had established contact with civilizations seeking refuge from Voran expansion. These interactions were kept secret to prevent panic and to protect our developing capabilities. Through these exchanges, we gained access to technologies centuries beyond our development curve, which we then adapted and improved upon using uniquely human approaches. The assembly sat in stunned silence as Ross continued, explaining how the world's greatest scientific minds had been quietly recruited, how resources had been channeled through black budgets and shadow corporations, and how an entire fleet of advanced warships had been constructed in secret lunar facilities. The quantum barrier system, which neutralized the initial Voran attack, represents perhaps our greatest achievement, a defense mechanism that shifts incoming energy weapons into a parallel dimensional space. It is, for all practical purposes, impenetrable to any technology we have encountered or can theorize. As Ross concluded his presentation, the Secretary General stepped forward. Dr. Ross, the world owes you and your colleagues an immeasurable debt. But this revelation raises serious questions about governance and oversight. Who controls these technologies now? Who makes decisions about their use? President Murphy, seated with the U.S. delegation, rose to address the Assembly. That, Mr. Secretary General, is precisely why we are here today. Project Prometheus has always been a multinational effort, but operated under necessary secrecy. Now, We propose the establishment of a transparent global authority to oversee Earth's defenses and our interactions with extraterrestrial civilizations. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of leaders from nations large and small. The technologies we now possess could ensure peace on Earth for generations, or they could tear us apart if misused or monopolized. The choice before us is clear: unite as a planet or risk everything we've gained. Over the following weeks, the framework for a new global defense and diplomatic structure emerged. The United Earth Security Council would oversee the defensive fleet, with representation from all nations proportional to their population and contribution. Parallel to this, the Interstellar Diplomatic Corps would manage humanity's emerging relationships with other civilizations. Captain Michelle Grant, the hero of Earth's defense, was appointed Fleet Admiral, while Dr. Elizabeth Kane headed the newly established Xenoscience Division, dedicated to understanding and adapting extraterrestrial technologies for peaceful applications. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Martinez found himself promoted and assigned as liaison between Earth's military leadership and the emerging resistance movements on Varan-occupied worlds. His experience in detecting the initial invasion made him uniquely qualified to establish secure communications with subjugated species planning their liberation. 3 months after the failed Voran invasion, the UES Ambassador, a converted Prometheus vessel commanded by Captain Helen Parker, departed Earth orbit on humanity's first official diplomatic mission to Nexus Station. On board were representatives from 23 nations, selected for their expertise in diplomacy, science, and cultural exchange. As the ship accelerated beyond the Moon's orbit, Captain Parker addressed her crew. "We carry with us the hopes and responsibilities of our entire species. Earth is no longer isolated. We have taken our place among the stars. Our mission is not conquest or dominance, but to forge alliances, share knowledge, and perhaps to help bring freedom to those who have lost it." The ship engaged its quantum drive, rippling through the fabric of space-time in a manner that would have been considered impossible just months earlier. On Earth, in a small classroom in Nairobi, a teacher adjusted her telescope, allowing her students to take turns observing the departure of the ambassador, visible as a bright streak accelerating away from the Moon. "That ship carries people from many countries," she explained to the wide-eyed children. "People who look different, speak different languages, believe different things, but who are working together to represent all of us." A young girl looked up from the telescope. "Will I be able to go to the stars someday, teacher?" The teacher smiled, remembering her own childhood, when such questions would have been purely fictional fantasy. "Yes, Amara, I believe you will. The universe has opened to us. Now we must be worthy of it." That night, across the planet, people gathered in backyards, on rooftops, and in observatories, gazing upward with new understanding. The stars were no longer distant, unknowable points of light. They were destinations, some harboring civilizations both wondrous and terrible. And among them, Earth had emerged not as a primitive backwater, but as a power to be reckoned with, a defender of freedom, a beacon of hope. In the Nevada Command Center, now operating openly as Earth Defense Headquarters, President Murphy stood with Colonel Davis, watching a holographic display of known galactic civilizations. "The Varan are mobilizing," Davis noted. "Intelligence suggests they're consolidating forces, abandoning outlying systems to strengthen their core worlds." "They fear us," Murphy observed. "With good reason," Davis replied. "But fear can make empires desperate. We should prepare for potential counterattacks." Murphy nodded, studying the map. "How many occupied worlds have contacted us requesting assistance?" 43 so far. The Liberation Fleet can be ready within 60 days. The President considered this, weighing the responsibilities of Earth's new role against the risks of overextension. "Prepare the fleet, but hold for now. Let's see what our diplomats can achieve at Nexus Station. Perhaps not every liberation requires military action. And if diplomacy fails? Murphy's expression hardened with resolve. Then we will honor our promise. Earth will be the protector this galaxy needs. Not an empire, not conquerors, but defenders of those who cannot defend themselves. She turned from the galactic display to look through the view screen at the night sky above the facility. We stepped onto the galactic stage in the most dramatic way possible. Now, we need to show that we're more than just warriors with advanced technology. Davis nodded in agreement. The universe will be watching. Let them watch, Murphy replied. Humanity has faced extinction and emerged stronger. We've overcome our divisions when it mattered most. Whatever comes next, diplomatic missions or liberation fleets, we face it together. As one world among many in a universe far more complex and wondrous than we ever imagined. As if in response to her words, a communication alert sounded. An incoming transmission from the UES ambassador, already halfway to Nexus Station. Madam President, Captain Parker's voice came through clearly. We've made contact with a Tellurian diplomatic vessel. They're escorting us to Nexus Station and have communicated that representatives from 22 civilizations are waiting to establish formal relations with Earth. Murphy smiled. Excellent news, Captain. Proceed as planned. We're eager to hear their proposals. As the transmission ended, she turned back to the stars. Somewhere out there, Admiral Zexar was reporting another failure to his Emperor. Resistance fighters on dozens of worlds were preparing for liberation. Diplomats from ancient civilizations were scrambling to understand the newcomers who had so dramatically announced their presence. And here on Earth, a species that had spent its entire history looking inward was finally united. Looking outward to the challenge and promise of a universe teeming with both danger and opportunity. The invasion had lasted minutes. Earth's response would shape millennia.